The very worst thing you can do, I think, is if you're starting out in Flash, buying a kit of 3 flashes, putting all 3 flashes up and then working it out from there. Start with just one flash. In this case, it is the Flashpoint Zoom X from Adorama. Work that out and build from there. And the reason it works is because there's really only 3 places you can put a single flash if you really think about it. You can put it in front of your subject, you can put it to the side of your subject, you can put it above your subject. And that's what I'm going to look at in this video, how moving the light to those 3 positions affects the results. Actually, now I say that, I can think of a 4th place to put it, but I'll talk about that at the end of the video. Right, okay, so that is my light set. Let's get a model in, let's get shooting. So to help me out today, I've got the amazing Chloe. Chloe's going to be the model for this photo session, and I'm going to start with my one flash dead center. But before we get going with the photography, there's one really important picture I have to take right now at the beginning. I've got to establish whether I've got control of the ambient light in the room. So my camera is set. I've got a shutter speed of 1/250th of a second, f5.6 for a reasonable depth of field, ISO 200, which is my camera's native ISO, and if I take a picture without any flash firing, no flash gives me no picture, which means any light that you see from now on will only come from the speed light. So now I've established I'm in control of the lights. Why have I got the light centered? Well, this is a really good place to start because it gives Chloe the ability to move around. She can turn her body to the left or the right and the light is still going to come straight on. We're not going to get too many shadows, but we are going to get some shadows. So a centered light looks like this. Let's take a test photo. Here we go, Chloe. It looks really good, but if you look at the edges, you can see a little bit of fall off of light, a bit of vignetting. So I'm going to take that idea and maximize it, because when you're choosing a softbox, always try and find one that has the option, if not included in the price, of a grid. And a grid is something that just confines the light so it doesn't spread out quite so much. So if you enjoyed the vignette before, this will make it a lot more enhanced. Now I need to put this light just above Chloe's eye line, and that does 2 things. Firstly, it puts some light on Chloe and gives a catch light in her eye, but also from my point of view, I can actually photograph underneath it and not catch the edge of the softbox in my picture. So now let's test the theory that a central light gives a little bit more movement for Chloe. Now when I say movement, obviously she can't step out of that circle of light, but she can turn her body around to give more posing options. So for example, if Chloe's facing me straight on, we know that works. Do you want to turn to the side for me? So we have the same lighting on the wall, the same lighting on Chloe's face, but she can turn around and give me many more poses without having to reposition the light. And for a centered light position with a single speed light, that's basically this setup done. So Chloe, are you ready? Let's take a few photos like this. Here we go. With only a single light in the scene, really you're talking about shadows just as much as you are thinking about the light. So I'll mention them a bit in this video, I'm sure. And that's the reason I got Chloe against the wall, so you can actually see the shadows. In this lighting position, the shadow is directly behind Chloe, but it's also slightly lower than she is. So for the second position, I've moved the flash off center to the side effectively. Now that has a whole bunch of advantages from a photography point of view. I don't have to worry about the light stand being in the way. That's perhaps the first and least useful one. I do have to think about the direction of light. So it's going to come in from one side, and direction of light when you only have one light means there's going to be shadows on the opposite side of the light. Now that's not a bad thing. In fact, shadows are your friend. They give you depth and dimension. But let's see what it looks like. Okay, Chloe, here we go, quick little test photo. So the first thing you might notice is the background is going to be a little bit darker than it was before, and that's because Chloe has stepped away from the background and the light is a bit closer to her, something called the inverse square law. And then you can see on the shadow side of Chloe's face, we have a little bit of shadow, but there is still a catch light in her eye. Now I can take this even further by moving this light around. I'm going to pivot it on one of its legs, just like that. So now it's coming in from about 90 degrees, quite an edge light. Let's take the same photo again. Chloe, you're going to look at me. Now Chloe is already doing the right thing. Models know how to work towards the light. But if we do the wrong thing, we can see that the background is a little darker because the light is turned away from it. And the shadow side of Chloe is just a lot darker. Now, to fix this problem, all I'm going to ask Chloe to do is just turn slightly towards the light. So if you're only using one light and it's off center, ask your model to turn towards the light. And the difference is quite a lot. The background is still exactly the same as it was before, but now we have light on both of Chloe's eyes. Yes, there's still some shadow there, but it isn't that dramatic. So this look can also work with a wall. So it's exactly the same lighting position. Chloe is against the wall. So now our one flash is actually doing two jobs. It's lighting Chloe and it's lighting the background at the same time. So this should give us some quite nice lighting. Chloe, just look towards me. Now if Chloe looks at me, we know we're going to get light on one side of Chloe, but not necessarily on the other. Chloe, do you want to just turn away from the light? Now if Chloe turns away from the light, we're going to get the back of Chloe's head is lit and her eyes are completely in darkness. So Chloe, if you can turn and do the right thing, face towards the light. And this works really nicely. Light on the wall, and with a slight turn of the head towards the light, I even get a little catch light in the eye. So once again, I'm going to put the grid on my light. It's going to give a little bit more direction to the light. It's going to increase the shadows. I mean, if you're going to have shadows with your one flash, then make them obvious, I guess. And now I have a lot more shadow at the edges, a lot more drama in this picture. And that's the great thing about using one light. You can have quite a safe shot, or you can have something with a bit more drama. Guess which one I prefer. Okay, Chloe, let's take a few photos like this. Unlike the first setup, this lighting position has shadow on Chloe's face. Now, if it's really deep and dark, you can lift those shadows simply by adding a basic reflector to the opposite side of your single flash. We've looked at putting the light directly in front of Chloe and we've changed it to a side position. So that leaves us one more position of the light to try, and that is directly overhead. Now for this to work, I really need a bigger light source. So I've swapped from the 25-inch softbox to the 42-inch softbox, and you'll find links to all of the gear I'm using in the video description down below. So I'm going to put this light up really high, pretty much as high as I can get it in my small home studio, to really give me the maximum amount of light spread. And I've got this on a boom arm or a grip arm, and that means it's off center, so I've got a sandbag at the bottom to keep this all nice and safe, and I make sure everything's locked down before we ask Chloe to come and step underneath. Now, she's not going to go right under the center. To maximize the size of this softbox and how much light I can get into Chloe's eyes, I'm going to ask Chloe to take a step so she's on the back edge of the softbox, something like that. So now I need to work out the exposure. We could do that by trial and error, there's nothing wrong with that, or I can get my flash meter and just take a flash meter reading. Chloe, I'm going to pop this near your chin. I'm working at f5.6, so I need to get my light to say f5.6, which I'm getting at 1/4 power. So I know I've got the exposure right on Chloe. Let's just take a test photo and see how this looks. There's not a lot of light in Chloe's eyes, and that's because we're only using a single flash and it's coming from directly above Chloe's eye line. So the tip with this one is ask a model to look up towards the light, and that's going to put light in Chloe's eyes and give us that sparkle that I'm after. Now you might think at this point I'm going to put a grid on here, and I could do that because this softbox does come with a grid, but I'm going to change it slightly. Chloe, can you go back against the wall for me? I'm going to drop it down. Let's bring it a little bit lower, and I want to get this just out of shot. So just like we had with our very first light, where it was framed ever so slightly out of shot, that's what I want to do with this overhead light. And then Chloe, if you can come back in again. just enough room to get the camera underneath. Now that is going to affect my exposure, so I'm going to recheck my exposure and get it back to f5.6. And I get there at 1/16th power. So we've really managed to save a lot of this flash power by getting it closer to Chloe. The end result is going to be a couple of different things changing. Let's have a look. Here we go. So once again, Chloe is looking up towards the light, but she doesn't have to tilt her head quite so far back because the edge of the light is just that much closer to her eye line, and the background has the look of that gridded effect, but it isn't. It's just the natural fall off of light because it's roughly about 1 meter behind Chloe, or 3 feet-ish. And that's really all there is for this lighting setup. So Chloe, if you're ready, let's take a few photos like this. Here we go. Now you might think this lighting position looks the same as the very first setup, but it's the shadows that make it different. There are no shadows directly behind Chloe. In fact, the shadows here are going to be directly onto the floor. Oh, you think I wasn't going to put the grid on my softbox? Of course I'm going to put the grid on the softbox. Why miss an opportunity? We're still using one light, we're still using the big softbox, but now with added grid. And I pushed Chloe right back against the wall for a little bit more obvious channeling of the light. That's the idea. Something for your feet, Chloe. There we go. Let's keep going. Here we go. I love how the grid adds that arc shape of shadow to the wall, but of course it does also increase the shadows on Chloe. And once again, if you need to lift those shadows, a silver reflector down by her feet might be just the ticket. With so many variables in flash photography, just things like the size and shape of your softbox, you might think that having a single flash is a great idea because it's going to simplify your process, but I disagree. Working with a single light source is the hardest way to work because you've only got one light source, one direction, and one chance to get it right. But if you do get it right, master a single flash, you will be much better at lighting in the long term. Now, oh, I nearly forgot, the fourth place you can put the light: in front, to the side, above. It is below, pointing up. But as it's not Halloween, that's not something I'm going to be doing. Now, if you've enjoyed this video or you've got any questions, leave me a comment down below. Click on the bell icon and you'll never miss a video right here on Adorama TV. And of course, remember to click on that subscribe button. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.